If you're interested in building a DIY winch bumper for your Subaru, this is definitely the video for you. This is the second version. We built this one out of 1/4" aluminum. We built the first one out of 3/16 steel. It's a more difficult material to cut, but it is much easier to weld. And if you're going to simultaneously teach yourself how to weld, we suggest that you start with steel. I don't want to discourage you, but there's a couple things that you should know. Once you remove the front plastic cover of the bumper, this is what it looks like underneath. Behind that black piece of foam is the crash bar. This is the thing that we're going to remove and replace with our own structure. The real issue is that you have to delete or relocate a couple things. In this case, the windshield washer reservoir. In my case, I just deleted it. That white plastic piece you see there is a resonator chamber for the air engine intake. You can cut it off at the top and cap it. One last rather important thing is the active air shutter servo at the bottom of the bumper. Now there's a continuous rotation servo down there that is surprisingly smart, and you need to trick it by mechanically limiting its rotation to exactly 90 degrees. Now I've designed and shared 3D printable files for this. Unfortunately, you need the print to be very strong. It kept breaking my print, so I had it professionally ordered from Shapeways. Now let's get to the construction. Well, in this case, the disassembly first. I had to remove the skid plate. You can see those two slots at the front where it slips up underneath the lip of the bottom of the old steel bumper. We kept that design because it worked really well. I got most of the material from Midwest Steel Supply. I did have to pick up a U-channel section from Home Depot. Here are the cut lists that I requested from the steel and aluminum company. Here's a side view without the bumper, and we can take a look at the approach angle that's ultimately limiting the car. So unless you're going to redesign that lower radiator support, this is the best angle that you're going to get. And so your next best option, and what we're choosing to do, is to reinforce the bumper so that it can take impacts. Once the crash bar is removed, there are 4 bolts on each side that tie very strongly to the frame or unibody of the vehicle. You can see those 2 shiny aluminum plates, and you can see the 2 bolts at the bottom, but you can't quite see the 2 at the top. So that's the first thing that you need to make. This is the blade that we used in the miter saw. It was very effective at cutting aluminum. You just need to go very, very slowly. Those 2 plates are 5 inches by 8 inches. The 4 holes were drilled in each of the plates. The next thing that we needed were the arms that extend forward from those plates. Each arm was about 11 3/4 of an inch long. With a grinder, we tapered the edges to get a better weld since the material is so thick. The next thing we added was the shelf. This is where the winch sits. The first version and the second version not only attached to the 8 points where the crash bar originally attached, but there's also 2 points in the lower radiator support where you can attach as well. And this is a really cool piece that keeps the bolts flush mounted, so it's smooth and the heads won't get damaged and you'll be able to remove it. So we cut a section and used the U-channel to create standoffs, and we drilled a hole through it so that the bolt can pass through the kind of skid plate section and then firmly attached to the lower radiator support. On the first version, the steel version, we were able to order recovery points, but in this case, out of aluminum, we kind of had to make our own from scratch. So we kind of traced the original one, scaled it up, Andrew cut out the rough shape, and then I kind of made it look a little bit better. Now you really don't want your recovery points to get torn off the bumper and turned into a deadly projectile, so just to add a little more strength, 3 holes were drilled in the faceplate. You'll see that in a second, and Andrew did some plug welds to add a little extra strength to the back. Here you can see the faceplate has been welded on, and the most important design feature that you can see is that the 2 recovery points are perfectly in line with the base plates that attach where the original crash bar was. The next thing that we added was the diagonal section that connects the faceplate up at the top middle there down to that bottom piece with the standoffs. After it was tacked in place, we took it off, and Andrew did a few short sections of weld just to give it some strength while we add the gussets. Here you can see they are on the inside. Basically, the shelf that holds the winch needs to be supported. There's going to be a ton of torque on it when that thing has 5,500 pounds of force on it, and to keep it from twisting, we're attaching it to the inside of the diagonal section. At this point, the bumper weighs about 47 pounds. And at this point, it's the same configuration as the original steel one, which weighs 107 pounds. So quite a bit of weight savings there, even though we are going to add some more structure to the aluminum one. Now, this construction took place over like 4 or 5 days, working for a few hours at a time. And in between, I would take it home and I would use a grinder to clean up the welds. It's important, if you're going to build yours out of aluminum, that you use flap discs that are designed for aluminum. If not, they'll get gummed up and they'll become ineffective very quickly. There you can see the slot for the Haas fairlead, where the winch line comes through, and you can see where I'm going to install the SS3 fog lights made by Diode Dynamics. These are the jigsaw blades that I used to cut those holes. Of course, you drill a hole first with a normal bit, and then you can put your jigsaw in there and cut the shape that you want. So here you can see the red arrow pointing to these side plates, and these are so awesome because they box in the structure. And if you measure it really carefully, you can actually get them even to tie in to the mounting plates, which adds a tremendous amount of strength. The next thing we do is we add, we call them the wings or the corner sections. And with the plastic bumper on, we kind of followed the contour and tacked each of these little sections in place. This picture gives you an idea of what the welds look like right after they're completed. Making the bumper look good requires quite a few hours with a grinder. Now, if you remember from the beginning, when I removed the skid plate, there were these 2 slots where the Primitive Racing skid plate attaches to the front bumper. So we drilled circular holes and enlarged them to make them square to fit these carriage bolts in there, which are nice and smooth on the bottom, which is the side that's exposed. And then with a large fender washer and a nut, we could clamp the skid plate to the top inside edge of the new bumper. I absolutely love the lights, but they were a pain to install. So had to drill a ton of holes and then jigsaw the shape out. At this point though, the bumper weighs 57 pounds. This is of course before you add the lights and before you add the winch. These are what the lights look like from behind. Now, an interesting thing about these is that the fog lights have amber backlights. So there's like 2 positive wires and 1 ground. So you can see that I grounded it to the bumper, which of course has a great ground to the rest of the car because it's bolted to it. And then the 2 positive wires I ran back to my power control box. Here's what the winch looks like when it's attached. You can see that there are the standard 4 bolts that go into the bottom of the winch. And here you can see the ready to go weight with the winch and the lights is 81.3 pounds. I absolutely love the look. It's the same basic design as the original steel one, except now we have some corner sections. When you're making the side pieces, don't forget to leave a little notch so you can stick a socket in there and access the lower inner of the 4 mounting plate bolts. I really like the lights. The fog pattern in yellow is fantastic for inclement weather, and the corner mounted floods are fantastic for filling in those side areas that your headlights don't illuminate. I'd like to thank my friend Andrew for building 2 bumpers for me, and I'd like to extend my help to anyone who is working on their own bumper. If you have any questions, please ask them in the comments below. I'm happy to help. If you found this informative, please hit the like button. That helps. Subscribe if you want to see more Subaru stuff, and thanks for watching.